right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to our traffic council meeting for July 25th. I'll just begin by introducing everyone. I'm David Kozis. I'm the transportation coordinator from the Public Works Department and the traffic council chair. We have joining us tonight the other voting members of traffic council. We have Captain Devine from the Traffic Bureau. We have our citizen representative, Mitch Fishman, Councilor Downs from Ward 5, and we should be joined by Ned Codd. I'm sure he'll be joining us soon. He's the Director of Transportation Operations for DPW. We also have our alternate citizen representative, Margot Schoenfelder, and our committee clerk, Danielle Delaney. So we'll just begin with, I'll open our first item of the evening. Our first item is TC 2624. Councilor Danberg requesting the removal of one metered parking space on Herrick Road at the request of the Newton Fire Department to provide emergency vehicular access to a 9-unit multifamily dwelling recently constructed at 39 Herrick Road. So we'll begin with a brief presentation, then we can open it up to any comments that anybody might have. And I'm just going to try and move some things around on my screen. Okay. So this is the location of Herrick Road in Newton Center, and the red box is the location of the parking meter that we will be talking about removing. The reason for its removal is a new building, which is, I think it's almost complete and close to being ready to open. This is the building right here. You can see on this plan, and then a driveway that now comes out to Herrick Road at the location where we have one parking meter that located at that spot. This is the location that we're talking about. So the driveway would be coming out this way from the construction site through here, and then exiting right here in this spot. So that's where parking meter number 1413 is located, and we would need to remove that meter. We did receive a letter from the fire department. Let me just find, okay. So in their letter, they write that as stated in the request filed with the council by Councilor Danberg, the Fire Prevention Bureau has determined in the interest of public safety that vehicular access for emergency vehicles from Herrick Road is a necessity if the building is to be occupied. To that end, such access cannot be achieved without the removal of one metered parking space on Herrick Road to provide the required curb cut opening. So that's the reason for the removal of the meter. And the recommendation is to approve the request, to approve the docketed item. This is the technical language that we would be voting on. We would be removing some language from our traffic and parking regulations, the language shown in red here in section 176 of our traffic and parking regulations, and replacing it with new language that I went out and measured. And so, that's what we would be voting on in order to remove this parking meter. So to that end, I will make a motion to approve the language of, this would be TPR 943, I believe. Right, Danielle?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm making a motion to approve the language of TPR 943 for TC 2624 to remove that metered parking spot. Before we vote, let's see if anybody would like to make a comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment? Just now's the time to raise your hand and we will unmute you. Okay. Mitch?
Oh, I was waiting to see if there was anybody
I don't
else.
see anyone from the public, so go ahead.
So I guess, I mean, I have no objection to this, but are you, are you saying that this new development went up and it did not have an access on Herrick, it had an access some other place? And all of a sudden they wanted to have this access now, and I can understand how the fire department could, support it, but I wondered why it never surfaced earlier.
I mean, I don't know all those answers, Mitch. I do know that there is an access from Cypress. So this would be a secondary access. And I think that we might have Terry Morris here. Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
he's here.
Terry, are you able to answer that question? And you have to
Oh.
unmute, please. And Danielle, I don't know if okay,
Can you
looks
hear
like
me
you can
now?
unmute
There he
yourself.
goes.
Okay, go ahead,
Thank
Terry.
you, David, for the opportunity. This petition was approved with a conditional permit to provide access from Herrick Road only in the event that, well, I should start by saying access to this property for at least the last 30 years has been by license from the mayor through the municipal parking lot to access this land, which previously was used as a parking lot. When we got this approved, there was some concern about perhaps the city someday might want to develop the Cypress Street lot. In fact, during the deliberations, when we were going through having this petition approved, there was talk at the time about perhaps putting a municipal parking garage where the Cypress Street lot was. That never materialized under the previous administration. But nonetheless, there was still the condition was installed that in the event that should anytime in the future the city desire to terminate access from the municipal lot for whatever reason, that we would need to have access from Herrick Road. At that time, as I say, the condition was put off for some time. It was really predicated upon some future development of the lot. The current administration and the Newton Fire Prevention Bureau came out to the site, looked at the site, and determined that they would prefer that that driveway be installed now rather than wait to some future event, so as to provide emergency vehicular access to the site from Herrick Road, in addition to the access from the municipal parking lot. And that's really what was the catalyst for the removal of the parking space.
Okay, so thank you for that, all that background. So the bottom line is that at this point, no vehicles would be even entering into the site from Herrick Road. They would all be entering through Cypress Street.
No, I think the fire department envisions that they would have access from either point.
Either point, okay, all right. Thank you, Terry.
Could I do a follow-up question?
Yes, Mitch.
So, so I understand the emergency access, and I guess you're saying, Terry, that the access would be anybody could go in either way. Is that accurate?
It's only this access is intended only for emergency vehicles, not traffic associated with the residents in the building at this point.
And the curb cut, I mean, that's all been designed and approved, and all we're doing is getting rid of the parking space?
Correct. Mitch, the site plan was approved as part of the special permit process. This project wended its way through city council over several iterations over a decade. I think you might have actually served at the time, perhaps when one of the earlier versions was approved. But the site plan approved the curb cut. Of course, we would have to go through the DPW to engineering to get the curb cut approved, but it's already been vetted through the permit, special permit process.
So Terry, would it be the developer that would be, removing the trees, I guess we would have to remove one of these 2 meters and keep the other one there. I don't know about the utility pole or the street lamp, if it needs to be removed as well. The new curb, removal of the curbing to create access, all that's
Right,
gonna be done by the developer, right?
That is correct. All costs associated with the curb cut would be borne by the developer. That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
So we have no objection, David, from people in that corner building?
I have not received any objections to this item. I mean, all we're responsible for at traffic council is to vote to remove 1 meter. We're not in charge of really voting on anything else.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Downs.
Yeah, similar to Mr. Fishman, I'm curious about the grade and the trees and the retaining wall that I can see there. Is there a site plan that shows where the driveway is?
I
There
just
is
have
actually
this.
was filed, there it is, yeah, right there.
Yeah, that's not extremely clear to me how you, and it looks like you have some trees right there where you would be driving. Planned, or what are those circles with X's in them, Mr. Morris?
I can't, I know that we had several visits with Deputy Chief Melendez at the site with the
Okay.
contractor as well. I can't speak to whether there be a tree removed. I do know that the reason why the parking space is removed is because one can't get full access for a curb cut through that location without impeding the ability to park at that space, in that space.
Right, okay. Well, all we're really voting on is the metered parking space, so I think for our purposes, that's enough. It just is confusing as somebody who sits on land use and probably saw the petition come through. Just not remembering the Herrick Road access and the grade involved, but could be my bad. Thanks.
Right, so at this point, all we're being asked to do is to remove this 1 meter. We're gonna end up possibly with a parking space pretty close to where the driveway is. We might have to deal with that down the road. I'm not sure, but all I know is that this item was docketed. And, we have been asked by the fire department to remove 1 parking meter. Okay, are there any other comments? All right, then I already made a motion to approve TPR 943. Let me just see if we are all. Okay, so all 5 traffic council members are here. Would you please call the roll, Danielle?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Cod,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved 5-0, TPR 943.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You as well.
All right, we're going to move on to our next item, which is TC 2324. This is Isaac Prezant, City Transportation Engineer, requesting to restrict parking on both sides of Lowell Avenue, beginning at Page Road and heading 100 feet southerly to optimize crosswalk visibility and provide maneuvering around DPW's flex post installation. So here is the location in the red rectangle here, Page Avenue at Lowell Avenue, or Page Road at Lowell Avenue. Here's a view. So we see this is Lowell Avenue heading down toward Newtonville. We have a crosswalk. We have the flex posts, which have been installed. We do have a fire hydrant right here. And the request at this point, all we're talking about, we're really not talking about different types of traffic calming that could have gone here or might go here in the future or any other change. All that was docketed for traffic council is the removal of 100 feet of parking on both sides so that we could have better sight lines of the crosswalk. Also, because we do have the flex posts right here, and of course we have a fire hydrant. So we're looking for 100 feet of no parking. Of course, you could continue to park on Lowell Avenue. A little bit further down, you can park on Page Road as well. So our recommendation is to approve the item as docketed. We would be voting to add a new parking restriction into our traffic and parking regulations that would restrict parking from Page Road 100 feet southerly on both sides. We do have an appeals process if any of the residents or anyone really is not happy with the vote. They could file an appeal between the time that the vote's taken and 20 days. That brings us to August 14th. If there is an appeal that's filed, this item gets transferred to City Council. It would be taken up by the Public Safety and Transportation Committee at a future meeting. But our recommendation is to vote to approve this item so that we can maintain the flex posts and restrict parking a little bit on Lowell Avenue. So now we're going to open it up to public comment. I see Martina Jackson, you have your hand raised. If you could just please state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Martina Jackson. I live at 115 Lowell Avenue. I speak in opposition to this proposal because what I think it will do is if you remove cars, all you're going to do is to make that part of Lowell Avenue even faster, encourage faster moving traffic. The issue is that as traffic comes from Watertown Street and there's parking all along Watertown Street, once people cross Page Road and they see that there's no parking, they will continue to move very quickly. The parking on both sides of Lowell Avenue from Watertown to Page has not in any way restricted the pace of the traffic or the rate of speed, and nor will it do that if you restrict the parking from Page to 100 feet southerly. Moreover, there is no place to park on Page Road. Page Road has a number of multiple family dwellings, and at the corner of Page and Lowell, there are two houses side by side that have multiple families. You are only going to cause hardship to those families, and the traffic that comes up from Watertown to Lowell, that the real issue is some way to distract or to slow them down. And the only way to do that is a flashing light. And I'd like to mention one more thing. I've lived this area for nearly 50 years. I was on the original Newtonville Advisory Council that predated the area council. And in all the time that I've lived here, in all the accidents that have occurred, because there's no turn light at Lowell and Washington Street, no left turn light as you're heading east, all we've ever been told is that it hasn't been docketed yet. That's nearly 50 years. What we need here, especially because they're children crossing, are the kind of flashing lights that you have at other places, like, for example, Newton Center. But taking away parking on Lowell Avenue at that area isn't going to slow it. It's only going to encourage greater rates of speed.
Thank you for that comment. Other comments from the public? Mitch.
So, given Ms. Jackson's comments, could you, David or Isaac, go through what the real problem is here? So
Well,
I can
Isaac's not
understand.
here at the meeting today.
Oh,
We
okay.
do have Ned, Todd, I would say that this is not a docketed item that relates to other types of traffic calming measures. Traffic Council does not handle traffic calming. That goes through an entirely separate process. So all we're doing here at Traffic Council is responding to this one particular request to remove parking. We're not going to be able to vote to add a new signal at Lowell Avenue and Washington Street. We're not going to be able to vote. We don't have funding. There's no, Traffic Council does not come with any type of funding. That goes through different processes. And, if there is some traffic calming that is approved at this location in the future, depending on what it is, it might come to Traffic Council at the end. But it's not something that we could vote on and have happen here at Traffic Council. It's not within our jurisdiction. I see Greg first.
How you doing? Greg first. I'm at the corner of Lowell and Page, 35 Page Road. Probably have one of the better views down into that intersection, and I voiced my concern about just the safety of it. I've got 2 young boys myself and see all the kids that are crossing that road and quite often almost get hit by cars. So I'm always I always want to support any opportunity to make that intersection more safe. I do think, if you remove cars, will you increase the availability of vision to folks crossing the road? I think yes. I think it's hard to deny that. But I think, to Martine's point, it is somewhat counterproductive because you're just going to take away the only slowing mechanism that we have for that intersection. The posts that are up there, I don't think I've ever seen them stay up for longer than 3 days. In fact, there's none there right now, and I don't think I've seen any in a long time. They get knocked down constantly, and we hear the thud sound quite often from our house. They get knocked down immediately because, one, they're yellow, and so are the lines in the middle of the road. I think most drivers driving the pace that they're going don't see them. So I can imagine it causes quite a bit of damage to cars as they go through. But they're ineffective. And I think what we're doing here a little bit is trying to solve the problem of them getting knocked down. But at the end of the day, they're just not the right solution in the first place. So I think if you remove, 10 feet of parking, 20 feet of parking, maybe it helps a little bit with visibility. I think 100 feet to some degree is overkill, and takes away the only thing that is potentially slowing some of that traffic down as folks come south on Lowell. So my general perspective is, yes, it might have some advantage, but at the end of the day, I think it's an ineffective method, and I think those posts will continue to get knocked down. Obviously, the fire trucks just ride right over them because they have to. They go right through the middle of that intersection. It's too tight otherwise. But they get hit down constantly. And like I said, I don't know how many times. I'm sure you guys track how many times you've replaced it. I'm guessing they've been replaced hundreds of times because they don't stay up longer than a few days. So I appreciate everything you guys do, and I definitely want to support any measure to make that intersection safer. We've been here for 3 years. We plan on being here for a long time, and I guess that's my 2 cents. So thank you for the opportunity to talk.
Thank you for that comment. So I think that we have 2 choices here at Traffic Council tonight. We could either vote to approve the request, restricting parking 100 feet, or vote to deny it, right? I think that if we don't approve it, I'm pretty sure that these flex posts would be coming out. I would also note that there is a fire hydrant right here. So already you're not allowed to park within 10 feet of a fire hydrant. Actually, already you cannot park within 20 feet of the intersection and then 10 feet beyond the fire hydrant. So administratively, we could restrict parking up to 50 feet from the intersection. So this item just restricts it a little bit further, I think, so that we can maintain these flex posts. So that's my understanding of the options that we have today. Of course, again, the item could be appealed if any of the residents are not happy with the Traffic Council vote. I think that this would be the first appeal of an item this year, if indeed a vote is taken and an appeal is filed. Counselor Downs.
Can you indicate, Mr. Kozis, with your cursor roughly where the 100-foot mark is? Is it where the current gray van is parked on this
I
slide?
think it would be about at this point. Of
So you'd
course, you can't
still be
park
able to
within-
park there, right?
You can't park within 5 feet of a driveway. So we measure from 100 feet of the curb line on Page Road, right?
Yeah.
So I believe it would be around this area.
Okay. Do we have any counts on just how popular parking is? How many people are regularly seen parking there, or is this fairly low demand anyway? Because that also won't much affect your, I mean, if you're not, if people don't tend to park there anyway, we're not going to be achieving much by restricting, by removing parking.
No, I mean, I've not done an inventory of, I didn't do the data collection to see how many cars are parked exactly in this 100 feet, right?
Yeah.
I would say that
Or
there's
are we-
streets all over the city that there's no parking allowed at all, right? Even Walnut
Right.
Street, you know, we put bike lanes in and totally wipe out parking on an entire street, right? The entire corridor. This, we're talking
Ye-
about 100 feet. We still have parking a little bit further down and on Page as well, Page Road.
Right, and I'm not so concerned about parking supply as I am about, so we were talking about by removing parking, you're going to encourage people to drive faster. So if nobody's parking there now most of the time, then removing parking doesn't actually make people drive faster. It just because they're seeing nobody parking there. Just similar to as in this picture, we're not getting any traffic calming effect by allowing parking there.
Right.
And that's why the question, not about parking supply, but about is this truly being well used? And I take that resident's point about those flex posts getting knocked down regularly. We had that intervention at my corner for a few years, many years ago, and it seemed to be like the local sport among landscapers to see how quickly they could knock them over. I'm wondering if it might make more sense to put them on the white lines. I'm just throwing ideas out here because right now we're just talking parking. Given also that they tend to go away in the winter, this is not really a traffic calming thing that we're doing. We're just doing visibility for the parking lot, for the crosswalk. And the traffic calming measure here with the 2 posts is something that we're going to have to play around with a little bit more before we, the city, not we, the traffic council, are going to have to play around with a little bit more to make sure we have something that's actually effective there. So I guess without any further data on how well utilized that parking is, I would say let's go with removing the parking to improve visibility, but know that we have work to do to make this crosswalk truly crossable and to achieve the traffic calming that the neighborhood needs.
Right, thank you. I agree with that. And I'm glad you mentioned the visibility because that was something that I wanted to say, but I forgot to mention that if we can imagine a car parking right here, right, and then a vehicle traveling north on Lowell Avenue and a pedestrian crossing in the crosswalk, you know, the parked car does block the visibility of the pedestrian trying to cross through the crosswalk. We have these cases that we've come to, have come to traffic council over the years of trying to daylight a crosswalk by removing parking and opening up the sight lines. So thank you for mentioning that. And let's move on to Captain Devine.
Thanks, Mr. Kosas. I know Isaac's not here to speak to it. Do we know if we have any residents in favor of this plan? Or I just heard 2 residents who are pretty much against it.
I don't know.
Where did complaint come in from for Isaac to research it?
Right, this was a project that Isa worked on. I don't know if I see that you do have your hand up, Ned, as well. Is there any, like, why don't you why don't you make your comments?
Unfortunately, Isaac is on vacation this week. I don't know the genesis of the flex posts. You know, it seems like it goes back a little ways, and you know, I assume that this proposal is to address the pattern of the flex posts being knocked down. Because the street is really not quite wide enough to accommodate, you know, parked cars and a vehicle being able to comfortably pass the parked car, staying, you know, on the right side of the double yellow line. I did want to speak to the parking utilization, which we haven't done any kind of, you know, formal parking utilization, but you know, this street view is consistent with, you know, kind of anecdotal observations of Lowell, which is that there are, you know, there are definitely vehicles parked there, but it's not, you know, sort of heavily parked up. The demand is not so high that eliminating these spaces would impinge on neighborhood parking supply.
Right. There's many streets in Newton that have far higher demand for on-street parking. There's some parking demand here, but there's plenty of availability 30 seconds down the street.
Yeah, my point wasn't about availability, but about utilization of these spaces and whether they function as traffic calming, and it sounds like they aren't. So whether we, you know, we can remove the parking spaces on the off chance that somebody will park in front of the crosswalk and remove visibility, but it's not going to work very well as a traffic calming device one way or the other.
Yeah, I don't think we want people parking very close to the crosswalk. Greg, your hand's up.
Yeah, folks were asking about utilization. So typically there's 2 or 3 cars there every day. So it's usually the Audi that you see right now, the Subaru, and typically one more car. So sometimes there's cars on the left side. I don't know if you guys can see my video. Those 2 or 3 on this side, and rarely there's anyone on this side of Lowell. You know, it's almost all just in this area and on that side. So
often there's cars parked around here and not on this side.
They're almost only parked in that section. So
Okay.
Right where you're looking here on that right side. Sometimes you'll see them on this side, and there's almost never any cars right here. But
Okay,
it's
thank you.
definitely almost every day there's 2 or 3 right there. That Audi, the Forester, and then one more.
Right, and do we
Yeah,
know, like, the people who are parking there, are they neighbors or visitors, or are they people who maybe work in Newtonville and just walk a little bit?
So I'm pretty sure it's residents in the house in the corner, and then maybe the next one over. I don't know. Martine, is that you're nodding? I think that's your Subaru. And then the Audi, the SQ8, belongs to this house in the corner. I think the other car that parks there belongs to the house on the corner, which is a multifamily right here. And then there's also a car or 2 on the Page Road side.
Okay, thank you. Martina,
Yep.
did you have another comment?
Yes, so I guess I don't have a cursor, but first of all, people can't park at the corner anyway. And it's more or less under the tree and beyond that there's parking. But as I said, and to this point, as you go further up the street, there are many multifamily or at least two-family houses. So you are going to inflict a problem. There is the parking that you're restricting on the right-hand side has nothing to do with the visibility of the crosswalk. The crosswalk visibility is all before Page Road, not after Page Road. So that is not really an issue. That's not a question. In terms of the other people, residents, I saw 3 distinct emails addressed to Mr. Codd about the fact that people protested, but they weren't available to speak, but they did send emails and nobody spoke in favor. And to Councillor Downs' point, if you're going to do anything, it's only going to, especially on the right-hand side going west, the only thing that you're going to do is to incur hardship. It isn't going to do anything to make the traffic slower. And parked cars help to slow down the traffic, not removing the cars. It's, I would say, fairly obvious, but thank you.
Thank you for that comment. And just to be clear, the request is to remove parking on both sides. So even though we don't have, we're hearing that there's not many cars that park on this side, it is part of the docketed request to remove parking leading up to the crosswalk and to remove parking, between the crosswalk and the fire hydrant and then beyond, and to maintain the 2 flex posts. So that's what we're voting on today. Other comments? Okay, so let's open it up to members of traffic council. Councillor Downs?
Yeah, I would just say, Ms. Jackson is right. Removing the parking on the side with the fire hydrant, and it's a couple of spaces, right? 2-3 spaces, but removing that makes less sense in terms of visibility for the parking for the crosswalk than on the other side. So if we were to amend it to just remove parking on that side where your cursor is, the left side, that to me would make sense. On the other side, I'm not sure what we're doing here.
Right. And on the other side,
because our argument is visibility.
It's visibility, and is also to maintain the flex posts, right?
I think I'd rather have that. I don't know that that's going to make a whole lot of difference, frankly, because where they got knocked down in front of my house, there was no parking at all and plenty of visibility, and it's just, all of our streets are a little narrow, and if you're driving too fast, you hit flex posts.
I mean, all I can say is, this item was docketed by Isaac, and it specifically says that the whole point is to optimize crosswalk visibility and provide maneuvering around DPW's flex post installations.
Okay.
Mitch.
So it's very interesting discussion. I do think, though, that it's not a clear issue, and I think Councilor Downs had a modification. Do you think we could postpone this till the next meeting?
We could postpone it, or we could take a vote and see if it's appealed, or we can do a trial.
Sort of think Isaac must have some additional thoughts, and as Martina Jackson indicated, maybe there were some objections of people who couldn't make it. It just doesn't strike me that holding this is going to be a big problem, but of course, it just piles up on other items.
Right. Councilor Downs.
I would do, if I can, an amendment to just remove it on one side as a trial, and we can bring in the other side if it still looks like the posts are being knocked over.
So you are proposing a trial to hold
A
this
trial?
item as a trial to remove parking from Page Road to a point 100 feet southerly on the east side.
Yes, and strike the west side. Because I think for now, let's put that on hold.
Okay. And
That's what I would propose. If the members of traffic council are amenable, we can go with that. Otherwise, I don't know that I would hold this rather than vote it down right away. Out of
Okay.
deference to Isaac.
So,
Other-
oh,
who's speaking?
I'm
Oh, no.
sorry.
No, go ahead,
I'm
Ned.
sorry, David. My
ahead.
apologies for
Yeah, Ned.
jumping in. But you know, and I have not participated in this body before as a voting member. Do we are we, you know, are we open to amendments to items that are on the floor?
Yes. Yeah, we could vote to hold this. We could vote to approve it. We could vote to deny it. We could vote to amend it. We could do a trial, any of these things. We could vote to vote to approve the parking removal only on the east side, no change on the west side. Although administratively, again, we could, restrict parking up to 50 feet from the intersection without any process. Especially with the fire hydrant being there. I'm not sure if the flex posts would stay if parking is allowed right there. I don't know. Are there any other comments? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I would move my amendment, which is to approve, but strike that last line on the western side.
As a trial or as a permanent change?
I would do it as a trial.
Okay. So we have a motion by Councilor Downs to hold this item to conduct a trial to remove parking for 100 feet on the east side, the northbound side, prior to the crosswalk. Any comments before we take a vote to hold this item?
I would support that on.
Okay. Any other comments?
David, I support Council Down's idea as well.
Okay. I think we could take a vote to hold as a trial. Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Cod,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Okay, that's held 5-0.
Thank you. Let me just write down a few notes. Okay. All right, so this item is held, which means there's no waiting period. You should be seeing new parking prohibition signs installed as part of the trial on the east side probably in the next couple days. All right, so thank you all, and we will notify everybody again when this item is heard. I'm not sure when it would be heard again. We do have a backlog of other items waiting to be heard, and there's no meeting in August. So I would think maybe later in the fall or in the winter, we'll hear this again. All right, thank you all very much. And we're going to move on to our next item. So our next item is TC 2724. This is Councilors Gentile and Krinsman requesting to discuss and potentially take action to change the parking regulations on the segment of Woodbine Street to the north of Commonwealth Avenue, possibly by adding it into the Auburndale Village Parking District. Okay. So for this item, here's Woodbine Street. This is the dead end portion of Woodbine Street. We're looking at a design of a reconstruction of the carriageway in Auburndale. We have Woodbine Street here to the north of Commonwealth Avenue. Actually, Woodbine Street is also to the south, but we're focusing on the north. We have the veterinary hospital right here. And what we see in this slide is that parking along this portion of the carriageway, which occurs now, this section is going to be closed off to parking. Parking will be removed. The driveway will be extended. This is going to become park space, and 5 parking spaces will be added here on the main line, the westbound main line of Commonwealth Avenue. So the issue becomes that this veterinary hospital is very busy. There's a lot of employees there. The parking lot cannot accommodate all the employees and patients. For a very long time, they were depending on overflow parking in the carriageway right here, which is voted to be removed. The design's already been approved. And so we were trying to think of how to provide some relief to the veterinary hospital. I'll just begin by showing, this slide shows the Auburndale Village Parking District as it currently exists. And this little red oval here is the area of Woodbine Street that we're talking about now, the little dead end portion. So I wanted to highlight on this slide the areas shown in orange. Orange is Auburndale business parking, permit parking. So, and we see a couple different areas shown in orange. So you see this area on Auburn Street. There's another area on Central Street, an area in the Lexington Street lot here, and the area at the end of Melrose Street. So what these represent are, if you are an employee who works within any of the streets in this district, you would be eligible to go to the traffic bureau and obtain permits, placards, to be able to park in these reserved areas, in these orange areas, Monday through Friday at 9 to 5. The traffic bureau is in charge of determining how many permits are issued to different businesses. It's not an unlimited supply. And so we thought that a good way to help out the veterinary hospital would be to extend the Auburndale Village Parking District a little bit, and we're allowed to expand to any street that's contiguous. So we do have, luckily in this case, we are contiguous. We are able to expand the Auburndale Village Parking District to create what we, I guess we would call this phase 1, at least to see how it goes, to create a small zone on a portion of the dead end that would become another Auburndale business parking, permit parking zone. About 5 spaces. This is only on the west side of that section of Woodbine Street. So, and it's only a portion of the west side, just from Commonwealth Avenue to a staircase. There's a staircase that leads up to the hospital. It would not make any changes to the remainder of that dead end section of Woodbine Street, but it would create a reserved zone. So other people would not be able to park there, only employees. It would open up, hopefully, some spaces within their parking lot to their patients. It would, other people who might be parking there would be people who are going on a walk in the woods right up there. There's other places that they would be able to park. So this seems like a modest change to try to help out the veterinary hospital, because some of their parking that they had been depending on is now planned to be removed. So that's the idea. And we do have all this technical language on the next two slides. that we would need to vote on. Basically all that language just to create this little orange area right there, 5 spaces reserved for any, I guess, for any employee that works in Auburn, in this area of Auburndale. But really, you know, it's hard to imagine anyone else who would be interested in parking in this little area except for people who work in the veterinary hospital, because most of the employees, of course, are further down, right, in the village, or maybe, actually the Williams School, those employees, they get permits as well, different type of permit. But that's what we're talking about. It's a $25 charge per year for the permit available from the Traffic Bureau. And so that's what I have. Let's open it up for public comment and see what folks think. If you have a comment, if you can raise your hand and we'll call on you. Yes. Actually, I never said your last name before. Is it Dr. Whistle? And you're muted.
Okay, there we go. My daughter, I was on Zoom calls all day and having trouble with the different platforms and unmuting them, and she just kept standing in the background saying, "Oh my God, you're so old." Thank you. I want to thank you, David, because I know how much time and effort you put into trying to troubleshoot this, and counselors Krinsman, who actually takes his dogs to us, and Gentile for thinking of this workaround. I just, this would be a very small step in solving what's about to be an enormous problem for us. We wrote letters for 2 years now. I feel like we've been writing letters, talking to city planners, talking to city councilors, and getting nowhere. And this plan has just sort of steamrolled through without listening to us. And, as it is now, we have very limited parking for sick patients. If you can talk to clients of ours who've run down Woodbine Street with their dying pets in their hands because they haven't had anywhere to park. It's really terrible when that happens. And this new the new parkland and bike path area is going to make that even tighter. And this is speaking as somebody who rides my bike to work every single day. I'm all for bike paths, but not to the detriment of my patients. So this is absolutely needed. It's nowhere near what we need in its entirety. As the pet population in Newton booms and our client base booms, it's not even going to be a fraction of the parking shortage that we're facing. But it will be essential in just acting as a little bit of a pressure valve for what we're facing when this project is completed.
Thank you for that comment. And, it might just be the first step. Like I said, we don't know how many permits will be issued. The last thing I think that we would want is to, have nobody parking there because not enough people have permits to park there. Right. This little zone. It could be that the next step is to expand it a little bit more on your side, on the west side of the dead end. Right. So
yeah, no, I'm all for it. I just want the committee to realize how essential it is, even as just a baby step in the right direction, because it is parking for our staff that alleviates the private parking on our driveway, which is only 4 spaces. But if we are able to move staff from that private parking onto the road, and that'll be 5 spots out of the 11 employees, we'll figure that out. A lot of them will be doing more walking. But at least we can leave 4 spaces open for urgent care appointments and also for our clients with limited mobility. We treat most of the pets that live at LaSalle Village, and those clients are not going to be walking across the crosswalk on Commonwealth Avenue carrying a cat carrier. That's not an option for them. So this is essential, but not quite going to be enough.
One thing I would add is sort of depending on how many permits are issued to the hospital staff, and that's up to the Traffic Bureau to determine. if there's more than 5 permits that are issued. We do have other areas, right? So it's probably, I don't know, what would you say, like a 3 or 4 minute, 5 minute walk maybe to walk across a safer Commonwealth Avenue in a crosswalk down
Right.
Woodbine Street and into this area
Right,
here.
as long as there's the
Okay.
crosswalks are there, yes, people, ambulatory people with healthy pets can certainly park on Woodbine and walk across Com Ave, whether they're willing to do that or not, and leave spaces open for more emergent cases. Who knows?
Right. So of course, the patients, any patient and would be able to park on Woodbine Street. This is a 2-hour limit.
Our
If
clients,
2
our
hours
patients
is
don't
enough-
drive.
Hmm?
I said our clients, our patients don't drive.
Your patients, owners. Right. So if an appointment could be handled within 2 hours, that could be an option to park on this side and walk across.
Yes,
And for staff, I was saying for staff parking all day. This, we're lucky in some ways in this section portion of Auburndale compared to other village centers, that there's a lot of space. We have big areas that are, wide open and that there's parking available for anyone that has an Auburndale business permit. Just not right exactly,
Mhm.
close, not the closest possible spaces, right, to the hospital, and not as convenient as where the carriageway parking used to be,
right.
right? Thank you. Other comments? Okay. Are there any comments from traffic council members? Okay. Captain Devine, a lot of this is going to fall on you guys to determine how many permits to issue. So you might not know right now, but it's something, at least I'm glad that you're hearing the backstory and hearing all the demand and, sort of the position they've been put in with the improvements for most of us along the carriageway,
No, I get it. I feel their predicament.
right? Counselor Downs.
I was just gonna say, good work.
Okay. So, I guess unless there's any other comments, I will just go ahead and make the motion to approve all this language, to be able to create this little zone of, Auburndale business permits. That would be TPR, let's see. I guess this would be
944.
TPR 944 now.
Yes,
So I will make that motion to approve TPR 944 for TC 2724. We do have the 20-day appeals period. So if this is approved, we would have to wait until mid-August. I'm assuming there'll be no appeal for this change. And then after August 14th, what will happen is you will see the signs installed on this little section. I'll work with our traffic superintendent to determine, exactly where the sign should be posted between the staircase and right now the carriageway. It'll change with the reconstruction, right? When it's reconstructed, that road will continue all the way down to the main line. But after the signs are posted in mid-August, that would be your cue to go to the traffic bureau and show proof that the employees work there, bring your $25 for each permit and see how many permits will be issued. Okay. So I'll make that motion to approve. And if there's no more comments, I don't see anyone else making a comment. We could call the roll, Danielle.
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Cod,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
and Counselor Downs.
Aye.
That's approved 5-0 TPR 944.
Thank you. Okay, good. So our next item then is TC 2824. David Kozis, Traffic Council Chair, requesting to change the parking regulations listed in section TPR 194, time limits in municipal off-street parking lots areas, as pneumo vehicles will no longer require any reserved parking spaces in the Lexington Street public parking lot in Auburndale. Okay, so here we are with the same exact map. This is, I guess it's no longer the current Auburndale Village Parking District map because we just added another little section. But in this is the area that we'll be talking about now, the Lexington Street lot. So here's over an aerial view of the Lexington Street public parking lot. It happens to be our one municipal lot that's been underutilized. So a little bit of background. Some of you might remember a little over a year ago, Traffic Council voted to make some changes in that lot because we needed to consolidate the location of where all the pneumo vehicles were parking. A lot of them had been parking at 150 Jackson, where the new Lincoln Elliott School fence went up. They were no longer able to park there. Also, they were EV vehicles, many of them. And so we voted to consolidate all of the pneumo vehicles in the Lexington Street lot. So we made some changes to the Lexington Street lot. And that lasted about a year, but now we find that pneumo is no longer going to be operating. I think they might not be operating anymore. Right around now is the end of their contract, and we'll be moving to GoGo instead, GoGo Newton, which is a different model of service delivery. So GoGo Newton does not have specific vehicles. There's no need to have any reserved parking spaces anymore. So the lot can be reconfigured again. We don't need those spaces anymore reserved for pneumo vehicles. So this is what we have now. We have a mix of short-term and long-term spaces, and then we have all these spaces that were reserved for pneumo vehicles either at all times or overnight, right by the chargers. So that is what we will be voting to change. These are just a few photos of the lot and showing where the chargers are. So the recommendation is to keep much of it the same, keep the long-term spaces where they are, the short-term spaces where they are, the accessible spaces, the pay station, and then basically put back what we had before. So before this change last year, we did have the sort of that orange zone, right, where the employee permits were located. They were located back here before these 6 spaces. We had voted last year to move them and reduce them to 4 spaces up here. So we'll be voting now to put them back where they were, back to 6 spaces again, change this back to short-term spaces again, and then change these spaces again to a mix of electric vehicles and long-term spaces. So pretty much just putting everything back to how it was before last year. So what we're actually going to be voting on is to change this particular table in our traffic and parking regulations. You see, we're making some changes to the Lexington Street lot, making some changes to the number of short-term spaces, long-term spaces, EV spaces. We're removing the pneumo spaces. There's not any NM anymore in this chart, right? So that's what we'll be voting on. And so that is a motion that I'll make to remove the language to basically remove the old chart and replace it with this new chart. Okay, I hope that's clear. I'll make that motion. That would be TPR 945 for TC 2824. Are there any questions or comments on this before we call the roll? I don't see anyone. It's pretty clear, just putting everything back to how it was. So Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Cod,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
and Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved 5-0 TPR 945.
Okay, and we would just be waiting our 20 days and then all the changes would appear in that lot. So our next item is TC 2924. Traffic Bureau Captain Daniel Devine, DPW Commissioner James McGonigal, and Planning Director Barney Heath requesting temporary and permanent changes in terms of the location and duration of public parking spaces and other changes to the traffic and parking regulations, including changes to traffic circulation along the section of Washington Street between Lowell Avenue and Chestnut Street to include abutting blocks of intersecting streets in order to facilitate the Washington Street pilot project. And I think I'm going to open the next item as well, which is TC 3024. Traffic Bureau Captain Daniel Devine, DPW Commissioner James McGonigal, and Planning Director Barney Heath requesting that Traffic Council ask MassDOT to rescind the 35-mile-per-hour regulatory speed limit along the section of Washington Street between Lowell Avenue and Chestnut Street in order to facilitate the Washington Street pilot project. Okay, so for us here at Traffic Council, a little background, the Washington Street, just a little bit of background. So the Washington Street pilot has been approved by City Council. They voted last month to approve the 75% design of the pilot project. The pilot project between Chestnut Street and Lowell Avenue is meant to create a safer roadway for all users, for bicyclists, pedestrians, motorists. It features a two-way bicycle track on the Mass Pike side, reduced number of lanes. Right now there's 4 high-speed lanes. This would be reduced. It includes changes to the location of the bus stops, better pedestrian crosswalks, a lot of changes to where the parking occurs throughout the corridor. And so that's where we come to Traffic Council. We're not really I don't think it's necessary to talk about the whole pilot. I don't even have slides showing the pilot. It's already been approved, and it's really up to us now to vote to hold a trial along this corridor. This is the Washington Street pilot geographic limits from West Newton over to Newtonville, to allow the pilot to be able to move forward. We know that we need to move the location of the parking spaces, the meters, various changes along the corridor. We need to be able to be flexible to make additional changes as needed. It is a pilot. We're expecting that we might need to make some changes. So we're not looking to change all language, to write up and vote on permanent changes to our traffic and parking regulations right now, right? We're just looking to be able to move forward with the pilot and to be able to be nimble and make additional changes. So what we're looking for is just a vote from Traffic Council to hold this item, which will, and this will be like a long-term trial, right? So as long as we're holding this item, we'll be able to make all sorts of changes to the parking locations, where the loading zones are, where the meters are, all this, along this whole corridor, right? So that is what this item is. That's my recommendation, a simple vote to hold. Okay, are there any comments? Hey, Councilor Downs.
I think this is a sensible way to go about it, and you've made the motion, so we don't need to make another motion. Scott?
Thank you. Mitch?
So on something that's so complicated, is it appropriate to create a checking in point or a limit on the trial, or do we not do that for these kind of large trials?
Well, it's a trial of the whole project is a trial. And so we're just trying to accommodate that trial. It's going to go before city council multiple times
And
before
it's,
we
yeah,
end the trial.
right. And it is similar to other construction projects and how we've been handling them recently. For example, Needham Street, right? Needham Street is under construction, a major renovation of Needham Street. We did go through traffic council to hold a trial to allow all that reconstruction on Needham Street. When it's done, we're gonna have different turn lanes, different signals, different changes that we're gonna need to vote on to update the traffic and parking regulations sort of after the construction's done and on Needham Street, which is, proceeding quickly, I think, or nicely. So could be the same. So I think we're just following the same sort of process that we've done for other projects.
My only, I mean, if you bringing up Needham Street, to me is, it's a little different. I mean, this is an area that has, a lot of residents on one side, there's not much on the other, if at all, except across from the supermarket, Whole Foods. But I'm just thinking that there might be some concern somewhere along the way, and maybe checking in at some point might be helpful. But again, there's ways of checking in by coming directly to the traffic council or to others. But it seems to be a pretty significant thing that we're passing. That's all I'm saying.
It seems more likely to me that the checking in or the concerns of residents would not come to traffic council. They would probably go to city council or to DPW or the planning department. And, those concerns would be addressed, maybe changes would be made. But I'm not sure that it needs to go to traffic council until permanent change. I mean, maybe it does. I'm not saying like no, but I guess there's nothing preventing that from happening. I'm just not sure that it's going to be needed.
I mean, for example, did we notify all residents in that corridor, typically what we do and everything else?
They've been notified throughout this whole process,
Okay.
right? It's been a very long process with many, many public meetings. So, I think traffic council's role is kind of small. All we're doing is voting to allow the pilot that's already been approved to move forward.
Okay. So we in fact we're not required to notify for this particular action, right?
No, we're not we're not required to notify anybody about any item except for someone who petition, like whose name is on the petition. But we do notify, but
Yeah.
For this, we did not notify everyone along the whole Washington Street corridor. Ned?
Yeah, I just wanted to, kind of ask the question, David, to your point that this is, there is sort of a great deal of city council, city council oversight and involvement in the project, and just a concern about or at least a question about the potential for introducing kind of some sort of conflict between a finding of the the traffic council and the city council and what would happen in that case.
So, I mean, it's really city council that drives all of this. It's traffic council that's acting as a rubber stamp. I think I got your question. So hopefully that was what you were looking for. Other comments? Okay, would anyone like to make a motion to hold this item for a long-term trial?
I can make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion to hold for a trial. Any last comments? Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Cod,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Okay, that's held 5-0.
Okay, thank you. So we already opened up TC 3024. So this is a related item along the same geographic corridor. This is a request to hold this item while we ask MassDOT to reduce the speed limit within the project limits, right? So right now it's a 4-lane road. We can see here that it's a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit between Lowell Avenue and between Chestnut Street and Lowell Avenue and beyond, right? So when the pilot goes in, it's going to have a different feel. It's going to be a different street. It's not going to be a 4-lane road. We're going to, it's not going to be necessarily safe to be traveling at 35 miles an hour. We're not going to be wanting people to travel at 35 miles an hour. We're going to want them to travel slower. So this item is a motion, would be, a motion to hold to ask MassDOT to rescind the regulatory 35-mile-an-hour speed limit so that it becomes 25 mile an hour along a portion of this 1.79 mile stretch. Okay, so if we do vote to hold, we would be asking MassDOT to rescind the special speed regulation, thereby making it 25 miles an hour at the time that the pilot goes into effect. Okay, so this would be, again, holding an item. Any thoughts, any comments? I'll make a motion to hold.
David,
Sure.
just a question. We're going to prepare the request and send it to them, but we don't vote to approve that request
We,
as part of this. I mean, isn't that sort of what we're doing?
right, but we can't make a change to our traffic and parking regulations, a permanent change, until we get their approval. So
Right.
similar to other items, we're holding it, we're waiting for their approval. Once we get their approval, it'll come back and we'll vote for, up the permanent change.
Yeah, but I think by doing this in a way, you're kind of not saying it, but we're kind of requesting to make the change. In other words, by saying, yeah, we're going to hold this to make the change. We're not just holding the item and waiting late to make the change later. We're hoping to make that change. So we're in effect approving the request, correct?
I think we're approving the Public Works Division to prepare the documentation required and send it to MassDOT through the clerk's office to rescind the previously approved special speed regulation.
Okay, I think that basically says the same thing, but yeah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Ned?
Yeah, sorry. Point. I wonder about sort of where and how to define where we are asking for the regulatory rescission. And it says within project limits, which goes from Chestnut Street to Lowell Avenue. And then, given that, what that would mean is that sort of at Lowell Avenue, so kind of like right in the middle of Newtonville, we would be bumping up the speed limit. And I wonder if it might be advisable to consider, extending that at least beyond Walnut Street.
Right. So I think that makes a lot of sense. We can hear what other members of traffic council think. I don't think that we would be voting to rescind this whole 1.79 miles, but I think it makes sense to start at Chestnut Street, continue to Lowell, and further, a little further, maybe past Walnut Street, maybe to, what's that, Central Street, right there? Maybe around there. So what do other members of traffic council think? So in the end, if that's what we think makes sense, that's gonna be really up to our traffic engineers and to you, Ned, right, to sort of decide what the exact endpoint is that we want to request. It seems that we don't have any pushback to lowering the speed limit to 25 all the way to, a little bit beyond Walnut Street up to Central. Any other thoughts, Mitch?
I guess whenever I see these things happening, and they're usually good for good reason, I always wonder how you prepare the community and those people who start to get tickets, whether you have grace periods, and I understand that's not what we're talking about, but again, it's a pretty significant portion of Washington Street. I don't know, particularly, as Ned Cott indicated, at those transition points where you're moving along pretty quickly, and then all of a sudden you're into a different configuration.
Right, so it seems like the idea is if you're heading westbound, you're going 35, then you're sort of slowing down as you're approaching Newtonville to something, to 25 miles an hour, going through Newtonville, going through Walnut Street, Lowell Avenue, then you see the whole road is different, right? So it's sort of moving westerly. You're slowing down, I think at the appropriate location in advance of the pilot.
Yeah.
Okay, so would anyone like to make a motion? This was a motion to hold. It's not for a trial. It's a motion to hold.
You made the motion, David.
I did? Okay, good. So motion to hold made by me. And we could call the roll.
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Cod,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Okay, that's held 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Let me just see, do we have anyone from the school department?
No.
No, okay. All right, so the next two items relate to the school department. Okay, so TC 3124. Traffic Bureau Captain Daniel Devine, DPW Commissioner James McGonigal, Director of Planning Barney Heath, Project Management and Sustainability Stephanie Gilman. Is that the right title? Maybe not. But this is including Stephanie Gilman from the school department and Co-Director of Sustainability William Ferguson, requesting a trial to modify parking regulations on streets near the Education Center in order to facilitate the solar canopy project in the Education Center parking lot. Changes to parking regulations may be needed for several months on certain streets within a 5 to 6 minute walk of the Education Center. Once the project is complete, project regulations will revert back to the original parking regulations as listed in Newton's traffic and parking regulations. Okay, so we heard recently that there is a solar canopy project planned in the Ed Center parking lot, similar to the solar canopy projects that we've seen in different places around the city, in the library a lot, Newton North, for example. So in this case, we recognize that there will be a loss of more than 150 spaces temporarily while the construction happens. These vehicles would be relocated temporarily onto the nearby street network. We don't know when this project is actually going to begin or end. Currently, we understand that it's set to begin in September, middle of September or late September, for a couple months. So whenever the time comes that this project moves forward, we know that we're going to need to make some changes to the traffic and parking regulations on the nearby streets for a couple months to be able to accommodate the parking that can no longer fit into, right, the Ed Center parking lot. So that's why this item was docketed. So this slide, I wasn't even sure if I was going to show this slide. Maybe let's not talk about it very much. It's really an internal slide for our staff in the transportation division to start to think about some of the changes we might need to make to the local streets in the area, right? I guess I'll highlight one thing that I'll call the school department later and talk it through with them, that we think that there'll be some spaces left in the Ed Center lot itself. Maybe only 20 spaces. So the Ed Center, they might think about whether it makes sense to issue permits to some of their staff who might need to park closer to be able to park in the remaining spaces during the construction process by permit. They might want to issue permits. Some of these other streets, we might want to, I guess it's really whatever is shown in black font. We might need to, change the parking regulations so that you're only parking on one side of the street, so that we don't have both sides of the street parked up and cause problems for emergency vehicles to get through. We might need to change some of the restrictions to allow parking on some of the streets where it's currently not allowed right now. On Linwood Avenue, for instance, right here, I believe that you need a permit to be able to park there. So that might need to change along a portion of Linwood Avenue. So we can come back to this slide if we need to, maybe we won't. But on this slide, it tries to imagine about how many cars would be fitting on different streets during the construction. Some cars would be able to fit in the Ed Center lot, the remaining spaces. And I was just trying to think of maybe a 5 or 6 minute walk shed from the Ed Center building. How many cars could possibly park on these neighborhood streets? So, this is just sort of like an estimate. Right now, for example, on Linwood, this curving part of Linwood, there would be no vehicles that would be parking there all day because both sides of the street have a parking restriction on school days. So, we might choose to remove parking on one side, allow it on the other side, allow some vehicles to be able to park there. So this is sort of an estimate. I think the main point is that we come up with enough spaces to accommodate all the lost spaces in the lot in the neighborhood for a couple months. But we don't know exactly what's going to happen, where people are going to end up parking. But we thought that the best way to handle it, it seems to me that there were two ways to handle it. We could either have a traffic council trial where we could just hold this item and allow us to quickly be able to make changes. If we see one street is overloaded with cars, be able to quickly make a change. Or the other way would have been through the traffic bureau, looking and then issuing, specific change requests, send it over to our department. We would then receive that. And then it seems that this is just an easier way to handle this for a couple of months. So that's what we're thinking. So that is, so that's the presentation for this item. We're looking for a motion to hold so that we could change the regulations on the nearby streets as needed once the construction begins. And then when the construction's done, we would just come back to traffic council and vote to end the trial and get rid of this item. All right, does that all make sense? Mitch?
So I mean, the same questions on both these items. The next one you're doing in Ward 8. So when you say a couple of months, the item actually says several months. But I guess, maybe it varies. But so I'm living on a street, all of a sudden it gets jammed up during the weekday. How do I know what's going on?
How do you know what's going on? Well, we didn't send out 5,000 notices to all the neighbors in all these streets, but we did notify the ward councilors. They're aware of it. Certainly the traffic bureau knows about it. A call to City Hall, to DPW, to the planning department, to the school department. Any of us would be able to say, oh, or just people would see that there's a project going on, down the street in the Ed Center.
But I mean, your internal map that you had, which I assume you'd be doing the same thing in the other one.
Yeah.
There are some streets that perhaps get missed and other streets that get picked up. And
when you say that streets that get missed, what do you mean?
I guess the question is, there are some streets maybe that are too narrow or perhaps have parking restrictions now and you don't want to add cars. So I guess the question really is, how do you get people engaged enough so they realize, it's not forever and, whatever happens is for the good of the city and, that you've been fair in selecting which streets perhaps get heavier use than others, or maybe it's everything within that circle, and you don't. I mean, when you say internal, I assume you're saying if you draw the circle, it accounts for the kind of number of spaces that you really need to show coverage, right?
I think that I did this just to try to show that we have enough spaces in the neighborhood, and now we're assuming half of the street capacity could be available to the school, to the Ed Center, half to the residents. It's not going to be exactly that much, right? We just wanted to make sure that there was capacity nearby, and we needed to make sure that we could quickly respond to a problem that we find out about. If we find out that, cars can't get through Churchill, or some street nearby, we'd be able to respond. And some of them we might know right away, we're gonna need to put some restrictions in.
That's what I was gonna say.
And we're not talking about like permanent signs, we're talking about paper signs that we see all over the city for all different kinds of reasons, right?
Right. Yeah, I understand. I mean, it seems to me it's not even an option. You have to do it. Making sure the contractor is not going to be out there forever, and that there's, I guess enough information for the for the local representatives to be able to answer questions.
Yeah, we just want to be able to make sure that everything is safe. Right now, you can park on both sides of Fair Oaks, for instance, right? And there's not that much parking that happens on Fair Oaks. But what happens if suddenly the whole street is end-to-end cars, for the Ed Center? We want to be able to quickly that day, right, go and post temporary no parking signs without having to ask the police, the traffic bureau to issue, a request, which would take longer.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, if the police find other complaints on other streets, they're in touch with us, of course, all the time. Right? So, I mean, I don't know if there's another way that we could have done this that's better. This is the way that we thought would work the best. Any other comments? We're looking for a motion to hold. I don't see any other comments. So I'll make a motion to hold as shown on slide 44. Just allowing DPW working with the school department and with the police department to make temporary changes on streets near the Ed Center as needed. The parking regulations. Okay. So I think we could take the vote on the motion to hold.
Mr.
Danielle,
Kosis,
can you call the roll? Yes, David Kosis, aye.
Mr. Cod,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
and Counselor Downs is not voting. So that is held 4-0. Counselor Downs not voting.
Okay. And then our last item is similar. This is TC 3224. Traffic Bureau Captain Daniel Devine, DPW Commissioner James McGonigal, Director of Planning Barney Heath, Project Management and Sustainability Director, I think, Stephanie Gilman, and Co-Director of Sustainability William Ferguson, requesting a trial to modify parking regulations on streets near the Brown and Oak Hill Middle Schools in order to facilitate solar canopy projects, including within the Wheeler Road and Winston Road parking areas. Changes to parking regulations may be needed for several months on certain streets within a 5 to 6 minute walk of either the Oak Hill or Brown Middle School. Once the project is complete, parking regulations will revert back to the official parking regulations as listed in Newton's traffic and parking regulations. So similar to the last item, we also understand that there's a solar canopy project happening in the main parking lot for the Oak Hill and Brown Middle Schools on Wheeler Road, and also on the road behind the Brown Middle School, Winston Road, where vehicles park and the special ed vehicles travel back there. We don't know when this project is going to take place. It could be starting as in September for a couple of months. We don't know. If it does happen during the school year, we know that vehicles will be again shifted out of these parking areas onto the neighborhood streets. So we did a similar map internal again, which we don't really need to show. But the point is that some vehicles will still be probably, we think, able to park in the main parking lot. Maybe that should be managed in some way by the school department or by the 2 middle schools for staff who really need to park close. We know that we need to find about 150 spaces in the neighborhood. So a lot of vehicles could park on Wheeler Road. There's a lot of parking available on both sides. So we're assuming a certain number of cars would park there, in addition to other cars, that are not related to the school at all. And then, just on different streets on all sides of the schools, right? So this is just an idea of about like that calculates that there is enough capacity within a couple minute walk of the schools, but many of these streets are pretty narrow, and we would not like to see all day, on, let's say, Voss Terrace or Sharp Road or something. We would not want to see end-to-end parking on both sides of some of these streets. So again, it's the same thing as before, to sort of give DPW, along with the schools and the police department, the authority to quickly respond by changing or posting temporary parking regulations on all of these streets or on any of these streets as needed, sort of as needed basis. So adding it all up, there is a lot of parking. Of course, what's probably going to happen is like Wheeler Road will be completely filled up, right? Maybe there'll be more than 27 cars parked on Wheeler Road related to the schools and less on some of the other streets. But, you know, we don't really know exactly. We know that there's one or two streets that, like, for instance, Fox Place, I took a look at that one. We know we don't want anyone parking on Fox Place. We might temporarily restrict parking completely on a street like that. Okay, so that's the presentation we have for this item. It's the same request to hold this item until the point that it's no longer needed, right? Any questions on this before we take a motion to hold? Mitch?
So, so on this group of streets, particularly on the streets opposite Oak Hill, between Wheeler and Dedham Street, there aren't a lot of direct cross streets. And I forgot the name of that one that I'm looking at here, but I was going to say, seems to me, you know, and again, I guess, you know, you look at it on a case by case basis, but somehow you maybe wouldn't want to start off on a major cross street, you know, unless you really needed to find, you know, some supply. That would be my only comment.
Well, I mean, like, pick one, like Sharp Road, for instance. Right now, you can park, there's no restrictions. You can park on both sides, the whole length. But maybe that's not a good idea to have it parked up end to end all the time, all day for a couple months, right? So we might want to restrict parking on one whole side and allow it on the other side. So post temporarily, no parking on one side, as an example, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could argue both sides of doing it initially or waiting till the problem comes up and then
Right.
discussing with the
Right.
neighborhood which side of the street do you want to eliminate for the next 3 months.
Right, or some combination if we think for sure. It's very likely that it might see a problem on a particular street, you know, post that one, and then I think we'll be taking a look, you know, right away the first day that the lots closed and be able to react.
And the ward counselor from 8 didn't weigh in, or I know you said you had contacted them.
Yes, I think there were a few, like there was one or two back and forth that they were aware that this was happening, and I think someone was wondering what streets might be involved. So I think I sent a list of these streets.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So any other comments? I'll make a motion to hold this item as well. You know, if we find out that they're going to be doing the construction next summer, there's nothing we need to do, right? So there might be nothing we need to do if it happens in the summer, and we would just, you know, come back to traffic council and get rid of this item. So it all really depends on what happens. But we just wanted to be prepared. So Danielle, can you call the roll?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Cod,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Counselor Downs has left, so that is held 4-0. Counselor Downs not voting.
All right, and so that was our last item. So that's the end of our meeting. Thank you all for coming. There's no meeting in August. So, and Danielle, we don't know the September meeting date yet, right?
I do not know.
Okay, so we'll notify everyone of our next meeting once we know. So thanks again. Have a good night, everyone.
David, I
Good
had a
night.
question. Could you hang on for a second, or should I call you?
Why don't you call me tomorrow?
Okay, I'll do that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Mitch. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Good night.